I flew in from the United States of America, so if I have more energy than you, that is a problem. We're going to do that again. Good morning, DTS! Better. And I'm really proud to be here with all of them today because I think this is one of the only all-female panels at this conference, and I think that deserves another round of applause. We're very proud because we're here, we're doing it. So before we get started, we wanted to share a little bit about who we are, why we're at DTS, and what we do. So I'll go first. My name is Shinjini. I am from Atlanta, Georgia, in America, and I started a media company at 24. I'm from Georgia Tech, Go Jackets, Industrial Engineering, and our content really helps dreamers become go-getters, and content services is kind of my day job now, as well as building our first motivational media content platform. So if you could all just talk about who you are, what you do, and why you're at DTS.
Hi, everyone. I don't know how I can follow that. I think coming from Liverpool, it's not going to have the same impact as coming from Georgia, but I hope so. It is the capital of Ireland, just in case anybody did or did not know. So I'm Anna. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Code First Girls. We are the largest community of women coders in the world at the moment. What we do is we educate women completely for free in local communities, and then we align them with jobs and employers to make sure that we're filling those very, very difficult roles. Why am I here today? A little birdie told me that there was sunshine in Dublin. And secondly, this is the closest thing I've experienced to a tech conference that's also like Glastonbury, so how could I miss out on that?
Thank you. You can hear me okay. Mary Christine Nolan is my name, easier to call me MC. I'm from the real capital of Ireland, Cork. I made the journey up to the big schmo to be here with you today. I am currently VP of Global Professional Services at Pluralsight, and our mission is to democratize technology skills, give more and more people access to the industry in a win-win. People who maybe would not have had access, maybe third level, or the cost of education is prohibitive for them. So that is our main goal. Why I'm here at DEI and speaking for this important topic is because after 23 years in the tech industry and starting as a Java developer and specializing in cybersecurity, pretty much picked the toughest route to go as a woman. And we're making progress. We are absolutely seeing more diversity, equity, and inclusion, but there's so much more that we have to do. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ruth and I am from the Garden of Ireland in Wicklow, so just a little bit of competition going on here. I'm really happy to be here. I work for Personio and our mission is to enable better organizations by streamlining and automating people processes so that our HR teams and our leaders can really focus on the most important thing, which is the people that are at the core of that. What I do, our CEO, Hanno, asked me this in the interview, so hopefully it still stands true 2 years later, is to really make sure that the Personios of today are in the best position to take advantage of the Personio of the future. And so really thinking about how can we equip our people and our talent to help us grow and to grow with us as an organization. I think in terms of why I'm here today, I think it's to be part of this conversation, to keep it really simple. I am not typical woman in tech as in that stereotypical phrase, in the sense that I don't come from a tech background. I'm leading a people and L&D piece, but still playing a pivotal role in driving a tech organization. And so I think it's just really important to break down some of those stereotypes and have these conversations and meet some wonderful ladies along the way.
Thanks. So, hi everybody. My name is Bríd McMahon, and back over to the west coast of Ireland. I'm from County Clare, so just up the coast from Mary Christine. And I am country manager for a company called Integral Ad Science, and IAS is a global leader in digital media measurement and optimization. We are around the world in about 15 different locations, and I'm really privileged as an Irish person to be leading up the starting up of our entity here in Dublin. So many of the familiar faces in the crowd today. I'm here today because this is an area I am incredibly passionate about. I've been working in tech, or the technology field, for about 19 years. Prior to IAS, I was with Google for about 17. and I've seen a serious amount of change during that time. It's been quite the career journey, challenging. There's been lots of highs, lots of lows, but I will always remember the people who supported me, the different trainings I've attended over the course of my career, or the panels that I have got to observe, and what inspiration I've taken away from these. So I really hope you leave with some inspiration today to bring back to your companies or for you individually. And by the way, I think I'm going to learn a lot here. There's probably 70 to 80 years of experience along this lineup here, so looking forward to hearing more.
Fantastic, fantastic. A lot of what we all talked about today just now is about how to get underrepresented minorities, specifically non-traditional backgrounds that may not even be technology, into technology. So how do we build that pipeline for non-traditional talent to enter technology? Because I think that's something that we're very passionate about at this conference today.
Well, first and foremost, we have to create alternatives to the computer science degree. Okay, so I think it's a well-known fact that the majority of people that study computer science are, let's face it, white middle-class males, right? The number of women that are studying to apply to do computer science are about 17% of UCAS applications. So it's really, really important that we focus on alternatives. And one thing that our research has showed is that women come at technology slightly later in life. So, for example, perhaps after they've chosen their university degree discipline, or alternatively, when they're in a career and they're 2 to 3 years in, maybe even further along the line, and they're thinking, I want to find an alternative. So one thing that Code First Girls has done is deliberately honed in on those really, really high conversion groups. Career switcher-wise, you're looking at things like teachers, nurses, and accountants typically that would like to move on across. And we are providing them with a vehicle to be able to do that. And ultimately, they come with a plethora of skills. So creating alternative ways to get in to technology, and also saying it's okay to change your mind. And by the way, we're not going to make you give up your job in the process. We're going to fund your education, and we're not going to ask you to apologize for being a woman. We're going to support you through that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful. I can go now.
And yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything that Anna said. I'll take it a slightly different perspective. There is absolutely opportunities there for people that need to be created who wouldn't traditionally have access to technology. They wouldn't go through the computer science degree. But it's not just about making it a fair and equitable world for everybody to participate in. It's an absolute essential next step for technology. The two biggest impediments to technology evolving is how we manage all of this digitized data that we've created over the last number of decades, and how we secure it from those who can monetize their efforts. And when we do that, the potential for technology is going to blow everybody's minds, even those that are working in technology today. Everybody has seen the evolution of AI and what that can do, and it's disruptive to existing technologies. So we just can't even keep pace. And what we have to do is look at the numbers. I was working at Intel back in 2015, and very big advocate of diversity within technology. And the number at the time was that we knew that by the year 2020, there were going to be 1 million technology positions that simply could not be filled, because we knew by the number of undergrads, the numbers weren't there. You move that on now, and the latest number I heard is that by the year 2030, there are going to be 10 million technology positions that simply cannot be filled. So we have to think outside the box. We have to create other opportunities, avenues for people to get in, not necessarily right out of high school, but if you've got some kind of an engineering or technical aptitude, that you can get the steps that will get you there. Not everybody needs to come from a computer science background. Having walked that path, there are things that you can learn and contribute to the industry that do not need a third-level degree.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you.
Can I go? Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe just to build on that from a tactical perspective of what an organization can specifically do, I think focusing on your early career strategy and telling that story and creating the opportunities as you're bringing in talent, to create the space for them to explore that and not have to have made the decision, I think, early on, but actually create the space within your organization for people to explore those different pathways, internships. You have to see the possibilities. We have to make these visible. So I think just really thinking through, when you think about your full talent strategy, how are you actually fueling that potential, and not having people, expecting people to make that decision up front and from day one, or maybe being too afraid to engage if they don't come from that specific discipline or background. So I think as an organization is just kind of questioning how you're setting up and also how you're communicating your early careers is a really tactical thing that you can do to make a difference.
Thank you. There's already so much been said, but if I bring it back to another tactical thing, in previous companies I've worked with, looking at the recruitment, so how we're sourcing and attracting that talent in the first place, really simple ideas like taking a look at the job descriptions or the specifications, removing jargon, which if you look at any job description, it can be very complicated, very dense, very off-putting for underrepresented groups in particular. And looking at the minimum requirements, do you really need 7 or 10 bullet points for minimum requirements? Can you reduce that down to 3, the most essential things? So that would be one tactical and simplistic thing, but also catching these people before they even enter into the job market. We build a lot of these unconscious biases, especially as we go into high school, secondary schools. It's really doing a lot of outreach there to help build people's confidence and make them understand what STEM actually means, that it's really quite varied. So getting all of that exposure as well at a younger stage. So start early.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I agree with especially what Ruth and Bríd said. Early career movement, especially for women, is critical. I started my career at Deloitte in the United States, and I realized pretty early on that I had to be a go-getter, which is why I started my media company at 24, and I'm building a whole brand around what it means to be a go-getter and ultimately self-promote. You know, I think a lot of us here, especially what I'm noticing, Europeans are a little bit shy about self-promotion, but that's where I can help you, right? We can be go-getters, and we can promote ourselves because we need money, we need influence, we need power, right? So a question that I had is, when did you learn how to self-promote? Because I think that's a really critical question that deserves an answer.
Probably when I felt like a fish out of water, which is quite a frequent occurrence, particularly in my younger days throughout my 20s. So we were just talking about when a company I worked for got acquired by a big Californian Silicon Valley tech company. I was director at the time, and I was like the only woman in the room, right? And I remember when the acquisition took place, interesting American-British dichotomy here as well. And all the guys walked in, and they all had Levi jeans on, and they had a check shirt, and they also had a Patagonia hoodie, or you know what I mean?
We love Patagonia.
Fleece, a grey Patagonia fleece. And I was like, holy crap, I did not get the memo.
Yeah.
Also, it's March. I cannot wear a fleece. So all of a sudden I was there and I was like, something as basic as that. It's like, as a woman, how do you dress for the boardroom without people thinking, oh, she's aggressive or she's not bringing enough presence? And it's this minefield because all these guys had that uniform. And that sounds really basic, but actually it's really, really significant. I started reading this book recently called Executive Presence. Really, really accessible. Like any woman in the room that wants to think about like that, or think about things that have happened in their life and why it was significant, read that book. And it basically says 5% of executive presence is appearance, right? But unless you get over that 5%, somebody won't give you a chance to begin with, to get to the rest. What's beyond that 5%? Around 26 to 27% is communication, and the remaining 57% is what we term as gravitas, right? Which you can kind of figure out for yourselves. You might have your own definition of what that means. But the definition in the book of gravitas is the ability to hold a room because your subject matter knowledge is so deep and so convincing and so authentic that nobody could bring themselves to question what you're saying, okay? So when I started to read that, I was like, oh my God, I'm starting to put together a lot of my life here. And in putting yourself out there to the world, think about, don't just put yourself out, but how do you put yourself out there in a way that you've thought about these elements and you can actually create something that is probably potentially the best version of you having executive presence.
I think Anna has executive presence. Do you agree? Yes. Because we want to move forward from if you have XX chromosome, you don't have executive presence. Because I think that's what we're trying to do here, is build a new definition of what it means to be a leader and self-promote. So Mary Christine, what are your thoughts?
So when you asked me this question, I still feel that I'm learning how to self-promote, because I think we have to accept the fundamental difference between the way women are raised, the way men are raised, and not just in Ireland, it definitely exists all over the world. And the moment that I really can pinpoint to is I was asked to speak at the I Wish event. It runs in Cork and it runs in Dublin in January of 2019. And this was aimed at encouraging secondary level students to think about getting into science, technology, engineering or maths. And I realized that when I joined the technology industry, I had one single person who was my role model, and that was my mom. She was quite unusual and ahead of her time. But these young girls, I knew from speaking at different events, they just didn't believe that it was somewhere that women even should be. Mm-hmm. And they had no role models. So I had to get over my own background of self-promoting. And even to say this now is, I'll tell you, it's a little bit challenging. But I'm the eldest of 9 children, and I have 5 brothers and 3 sisters, and I can tell you that I've learned as much about DEI from my family as I have in the workplace. And when I graduated of my degree in applied computing, I graduated with a first-class honours. I believed that I was somewhere within the middle. I was getting great grades. My mom would tell me, you know, you must be at least within the top 10%. And I thought, no, the guys are so confident. They know this way more than I do. And it turned out I wasn't in the top 10%. I was in the top 5%. Now, for a long time, that was something I kept to myself because as a woman, you know, we're the quiet, polite, we don't promote ourselves until my baby brother came along, the second youngest in the family. He was the only other one in the family who actually got the first-class honours. We're a little bit competitive. He would tell you his result 3 times over breakfast, probably mention it before dinner. He'd talk to his friends, and it would just be mentioned. It wouldn't seem arrogant. It was just, this is a fact. And I realized I needed to share that so that I could tell those young women, it's not that we can participate and, you know, give some small contribution. We belong here. We can absolutely succeed, and we can do it as well as the men are doing it. There just isn't enough of us doing it. So at the time, I was the first woman to get that result, but it was only because there weren't nearly enough who were even throwing their hat in the ring.
Well said. Well said. Thank you. And in some cases, I humbly think we do it better. So, you know, up to you to decide. Ruth, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I can really relate to a lot of what MC shared there. I think we're probably all, if we're honest with ourselves, we're probably all still learning. If someone has it all figured out, I'd like to have a chat. But I think for me, the question actually, when we were chatting about this, is finding your why. And I think it starts with really believing that you deserve it, or you feel like you should have a seat at the table. Because I think if we really ask ourselves, why do we not self-promote? It's probably coming from much deeper within, and we all have our own stories and experiences that shape that. So I think for me, it was taking a step back and actually asking myself, why? And also thinking about the implications it was having on others. I was an aspiring leader at the time. I'm now leading a team of incredible people. A lot of them are women, and I don't want them to not self-promote. So what example am I setting by not doing that? So really had to kind of unpack it, and it's thinking about the rationale. If I believe I can have an impact, if people understand the impact that I'm having, I can make a difference in the organisation, and I can get the recognition that I deserve, not just recognition for recognition's sake. So I think it's thinking about your why, and then also the environment that you want to create, because if we're, as leaders, not role modelling it, then we can't expect others to do it too. So it's that whole piece of being the change. I know it sounds cheesy, but I think to expect others in the organisation to do that, if we're not role modelling it, we're not setting the right environment. So
Fantastic.
Yes, thanks, Ruth. You said something, it's deeply rooted as to why we experience this discomfort when we're self-promoting. I grew up in the west of Ireland, brilliant parents, really loving, gave us as much as they possibly could, but I was always said, Bríd, don't get too big for your boots, stay humble. This is something I brought with me through my university years and into my earlier days in my career. And I remember when I realized how important it was, I took a workshop called I Am Remarkable at Google. It's really focused on this concept of self-promoting, on celebrating your achievements, why this is so important for advancements. And I learned that accomplishments do not necessarily speak for themselves, which many of us think that if we do a good job, it will be recognized, but you can't assume everyone knows everything about you and what you've achieved. So it takes practice. Always learning. You need to, feel that you have your own voice and you're comfortable in your skin, but it's like a muscle. You constantly need to stretch and hone this until you find your own true voice. So I'm a lot better at it, but still learning. For sure.
Absolutely. And Bríd, you mentioned something really critical that I know a lot of us struggle with. Be humble. But what I actually coach executives in my kind of executive coaching practice is if you really want to be a go-getter, state facts. Right? Facts it's not bragging, right? Saying that I was in the top 5% is not bragging. That is a fact, right? Saying that I was the undergraduate commencement speaker at Georgia Tech is not bragging. That is a fact, right? And I think that's something that I coach women on is let's speak in facts, right? This is not a lie. This is not bragging. This is not being too big for my boots. These are facts. Right? So, because I think something that we're also trying to do here, if you notice, is we're trying to change what looks like a leader, right? Because this idea of, oh, she doesn't look like a leader, right? Single moms who follow me, they don't look like leaders. But that's not true, right? And we know that there are data-driven strategies to really promote that when different people enter the room, there are better results. So if you could just speak to that, any data-driven strategies for us all to change what a leader looks like in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we've been massively successful with, I mentioned there, is the career switcher. So specifically looking at those groups, looking at what they bring to the equation, how they're disrupting definitions of early talent within organizations. And one of the most startling facts for me is all the career switches that have been placed through Code First Girls at organizations, 56% of them actually have existing management experience. Now, however, if you look at salary expectations, because they know they're starting in something new, their salary expectations are actually exactly the same as a graduate starting out in technology. What does that scream to any organization that we get involved in is if you are looking to disrupt definitions of early talent, the career switcher has a plethora of skills that they're going to bring along at a massive, the massive value for money. We've got to be looking at these different populations of women. And by the way, a lot of them are mums as well. That's another thing I should say. I've not met a better manager than a mum, incidentally.
Every day is Mother's Day here. Listen.
So look at different alternative sets of skills. Yeah. Look at disrupting definitions of early talent. Look at how you can bring in skills and mindsets that could actually disrupt the status quo, but for the better. Mm-hmm. The more diversity of thought and background you can bring in from non-traditional backgrounds, the more that you can make an impact within your own organization, the more you can innovate, the more you can think of new ideas, the more you can create products that are representative of the actual society that we live in.
Fantastic. Well said. Mary Christine?
Yeah, when I think about that disrupting the status quo, and I look back, over the last 23 years, and even as an undergrad, my path would definitely have been easier if I had just gone with the flow. Wear the Patagonia hoodie, wear the jeans and the Converse and, the heavy metal T-shirts. I started in the 90s, so. But I couldn't. There was something in me that I was like, no, I'm a girl. Mm. I wear pink. Mm-hmm. I like fashion. I'll wear heels. And I know when people looked at me, like, oh, you don't look like an engineer. And it definitely made my path all that bit harder. And I dealt with a lot of assumptions that you're not technical enough, whatever that means, just because of the way you looked. But when I look back now, my advice to people is be the disruptor. Be your true, authentic self. Because what you're doing while you might be alone and you might be the only person who sat at that table surrounded by the stereotype, you are making that change. And you're not just doing it for women. Again, like I said, having 5 brothers, if we want true equality, there needs to be focus on men as well. They have to be allowed to let go of their stereotypes and show their female qualities as much as we're encouraged to show our male qualities. And until we have that, we really won't have that balance in place. There are men who I have seen through my work who have equally been sidelined because they don't fit the existing male stereotype, the go-getter, you know, the push forward. They have those more restrained qualities, and you can be that difference and create space for them. So don't ever change who you are, dress how you want, speak how you want, and who knows what will follow.
So you can cry, guys. Yes. Well said. Well said. I think that's beautiful. Ruth?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely agree. And I think the piece that for me is always bridging the gap between, I think education is the baseline and having these conversations and really taking a step back and defining diversity more broadly, like diversity of thought, diversity of background. Like to your point, when you have a diverse team, we come up with better solutions, we make better decisions because of that diversity. So I think it starts with educating everybody to really rethink how we define diversity, but then there's this piece around activation and spotlighting and really showcasing those individuals that might not meet the stereotypical view, but who are absolutely nailing it. And they're nailing it for all the reasons that they're not the stereotypical individual. It's that uniqueness that they bring to the team and to the conversation that's actually adding the value. And so creating ways within your organization and also for yourself to promote that specific piece and to have a conversation around the value that that uniqueness brings. And that will look different for every organization, for wherever you are. But I think people need to see themselves in those positions, right? The possibility for themselves to grow into that space. So education is kind of the baseline and the understanding, but then actually everybody coming together to really spend some time looking at what are those unique factors and really celebrating them, I think is really important for us to do.
2 quick things on that. You mentioned data-driven approach. Every company needs to be tracking their metrics. What are the important metrics that they're looking at? Because if you don't know where the baseline is, you can talk all you want about DEI, but unless you see a movement northways, ideally, it's just futile. So understanding what those metrics are is what is the gender mix within a company? How does that change as you go up the ladder? In terms of people of colour, what's the representation there, underrepresented groups? So know what metrics are important to you and track them. And secondly, what I've seen really change throughout the course of my career. When I first started, it was, how is this person from a role-related knowledge, from a leadership, from a culture fit? We've gone from culture fit to culture add, which is great because that means we're not hiring likeness, we're injecting new energy, new ways of doing things, people who look different to us, and that is adding to this diversity of thought as well. So I think that's a really important change, and something as hiring managers in particular, we should be looking for the add and not the fit.
That's beautiful. Look for the ad, not the fit. I see a lot of people taking notes. Write that down. Look for the ad, not the fit. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's beautiful. And on our pre-prep panel calls, they were actually so wonderful to share some of their own DEI accomplishments at their company, and I was just blown away. But I'm going to let them share it because I think you should know. So if you could each just share with us here some of your greatest, newest milestones in DEI, because I think just from what I've seen, they are quite extraordinary. So go ahead and just share those. And we might have to applaud for each one.
Well, one thing I'd say is that we actually struggle attracting men to Code First Girls. So if there's any men out there that wants to join us, I'm more than happy. That would be fantastic. So that's one thing that I would say. But in terms of the milestones, we're working across all the organizations we work on behalf of. So we work on behalf of about 130 organizations. That will probably ramp over the next 5 years, potentially to about 500. across that, the subscriptions that organizations get access to, that will build into 1 million free learning opportunities for women to learn how to code. And 26,000, at least 26,000 of them gaining employment, either as a software engineer, data scientist, you name it. When it gets to a particular point in our education process, it's the most intensive part of our education process. We have a pipeline, because deliberately women will fall out at different parts of the pipeline, right? We expect that because guess what? It's not for everyone. Mm-hmm. A career in tech's not for everyone, but we want women to make an informed, autonomous choice about what areas they want to go into, what industries they fit the best in, and why. But by the time they get to the last bit of the process, which enables them to take the job, there's a 96% success rate of women moving off the education scheme and directly into employment with our partner companies.
Fantastic. And Mary Christine, Ruth, and Bríd, if we could just quickly kind of mention one quick sentence about your recent milestone.
Yeah, milestone that we actually actively measure every month with my leadership team is the number of lives that we've changed. And because of what we do at Pluralsight, we create opportunities for people to develop their technology skills and that they can move into roles that they would never have had access for. So on a monthly basis, we are changing on average 1,500 lives month over month.
Fantastic.
Yeah, maybe switching gears. This is not my milestone to own, but something that I am very proud to share. And I think as a woman in leadership, when I look at Personio's executive team, they're made up of 6 wonderful humans, half of them who are incredibly inspirational and powerful women. So seeing, Birgit, Maria, and Geraldine lead our sales, our tech, and our finance strategy organization, I think, as a scaling organization, it shouldn't be, but I think in many cases, this is a key milestone. So I think for me personally, more of an internal one.
Fantastic.
I would like to tag team again on that one. So Integral Ad Science, what really attracted me to the company, there were many things, but we have a female CEO, female CFO, female Chief Human Resources Officer. It's from the board, it's 50-50 split from gender's perspective, which is brilliant, really great, because if you can't see it, you can't be it. So that's very inspirational to me personally. And also we have introduced this I Am Remarkable workshop throughout our company, and we're scaling it gradually. So to really create this awareness around the struggles around self-promotion and what we can do to encourage it and be more sensitive to that.
Fantastic. All fantastic milestones. Very proud moment. Very proud moment. So this is our now final question, if we could wrap this up, and then we actually do have some questions from the audience that I'd really love to get to. So final question for today is, how can employers in this room, and future employers, including me, please pray that one day I'm able to hire people full-time. What can we do to hire inclusive and diverse teams that maybe haven't been done in the past? Because I've struggled with having role models that have done that. So what is your key piece of advice to people in this room to hire very inclusive, very diverse teams? Anna.
Well, let's stop talking about it and let's just act upon it, right? There are solutions out there, particularly from an early talent perspective. What that does mean, though, is if you're going to be that early talent person in an organization, it probably means that you're a bit of a disruptor. You're a bit of a change maker. You're not happy with the status quo. Now, I have a lot of respect for those people, and I'm guessing there's a lot of women and men, incidentally, like that in this tent, right? I'm certainly hoping so. For those individuals, my message is, right, go and do it. Just jump in. If you just talk about it, it's not going to happen. Go and actually make a change where you can increase the number of individuals from different backgrounds at an early stage in the tech pipeline. But the more you do it, right, the more you become that visionary, that iconoclast, the one that has to change, the bigger the target's going to be on your back and the bigger the burden's going to be. But you have to embrace it, and that's why I have respect for every single one of our clients that works with Code First Girls, because you're not happy with the status quo and you're here to make a difference.
Fantastic. Mary Christine.
I'm going to borrow one of the best quotes I heard from Gillian Keating, who's one of the founders of iWish, when she was talking on this subject. And she said, it's not just about having a DEI culture or goal. You have to think about what will keep those people in your company, because it's very hard to be the disruptor. And if you're the only person and you look around and you don't see like-minded people or people who have similar lives and challenges to you, then they're not going to be able to stay. The culture will eventually weed them out. I would ask everybody here also, if you hear anybody using the term not technical enough, stop them, because it has been used as a way to marginalize people who do not fit the culture. What does it mean? Technology is evolving so fast. Nobody knows everything. Anyone who says they do, run away, because we're all learning and we're able to specialize in certain areas. Don't use that term.
Sure.
Yeah, I think maybe just marrying the 2 points that have been made, we can't think about one end of the funnel and not think about the other. So you definitely need to know your metrics. You need to be assessing what your diversity is like. You be looking at the top of funnel and how you're sourcing and how you're bringing in and what your selection process looks like, right, to make sure you get those individuals into your organization. But all of that will be futile if the environment that they're in is not fostering that, right, and engaging them and retaining them. So making sure that you have the right interventions in place that they can see themselves, whether it's mentorship, programs, whatever it might be, but you really need to think about the overall experience of that talent that you're trying to attract and retain. And I think the one thing is to listen, not to make assumptions. We're all sharing our views, and there's a lot of similarities and a lot that we can learn, but every single individual is different and every single organization is different. So also finding ways to keep connected and also co-create the solutions. Don't assume you have the answers, or because this is what I would want as a woman in leadership, that's what somebody else would want, and really bring your customer into the creation with you. So I know I've said a lot. Either end of the funnel, and then to really build with them.
Fantastic. Bríd?
Yep. All of those things make complete sense, but make sure as a company you're publicizing it. Talent is they really care deeply about this topic. They want to work for a company that's honest, that's transparent. But if you're not publishing it on your website, if you're not talking about it, how would they know? So making sure that for either ends of the spectrum, attracting talent, what you're doing there, how you're nurturing talent within sponsorship programs, mentorship programs, and making sure that that's available and readily available to people who are scouting.
Fantastic. So that concludes our panel today, but we do have some questions that I want to get to. The first question is actually for Bríd. Bríd, how do you promote inclusion and diversity in tech when it comes to the life-work balance, especially family and career balance? And I'm asking you this because I saw your WhatsApp profile picture, and it's of your kids.
It is, and the dog. Yeah.
So, yes.
Flexibility is really, really important for me in the workplace. So I am only going to work in a company where I know I can control my mornings and my evenings. But I think you also need to be practical. We're working in an increasingly globalized economy and society. Sometimes you are going to have to jump on calls late at night if you're working across time zones. But to know that you have the flexibility to make that time up in the morning, I think is really important. So not being too stagnant or stringent in the day-to-day, and making sure people know how to manage their time as well is important.
Fantastic. I love that. I super agree. Ruth, I have a question for you. Do you think companies shifting towards a skills hiring first approach would increase female participation in the workforce?
Ooh, it's a big question. I mean, I think it would help, and I think we've both everyone has talked about this. I think the benefit of this would really be to really challenge ourselves, to be honest about what those non-negotiables are in terms of the skills and capabilities that you need to be able to deliver. And it would create more flexibility. If we think about mobility within the organization, understanding the different skill sets that we have across the organization and how we can leverage that. But I think this is it's a much bigger topic. To give it a 5-minute answer doesn't do it justice, but I do think there would be benefits to really challenging us in terms of, what are the non-negotiables, and then also where are their roles and flexibility within the organization. I think one large caveat is, how do we define skills? And I think that is a burning hot topic that probably has quite a few controversial views on it, but I think if we got that right, there's a lot of value there.
Fantastic. Can we have a round of applause for our fantastic panelists? They did an amazing job. They did an amazing job. Thank you so much for coming, and the fact that this entire stage is full shows us that this is actually a conversation that would not have happened 20 years ago, and the fact that you came out and supported it means the world to us. Thank you so much for coming. Have a fantastic rest of your conference, and DTS 23. Thank you so much.